Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and how are you doing, Ryan Slowinski?
Oh, I am doing fantastic. And listening people, how are you doing?
I'm doing real well.
Whoa, Bartek, please don't interrupt the listening people. They're telling us how they're doing.
Oh.
Amazing. I'm so proud.
They're not done. Wait, they're not done yet.
Yeah.
Okay, wrap it up. Come on.
Yeah, please. Please, guys, please. This is serious. Okay, we've heard your political views. That's enough now. Okay, all right, I get it. You're really big fans of that. Okay, but we're here.
Stop talking over Ryan.
Please, stop it.
Man, we're so gonna leave this in.
We gave you all of the time, and now you're going over it. And so
how much did you want to say clues right there?
Yeah. What was that? No. Okay, guys, stop it. You filibustered enough of this podcast. We're here to filibuster ourselves. That's right. We are spit and polish likingly. Guys, stop it. Because we're always spitting and we both happen to be Polish. Bartek, do you have any Polish updates?
No.
None?
No, but the listening people do.
They did what?
Oh my god.
Oh, well, okay. I'm glad you updated us about that. I mean, that's been the biggest update since that dead body fell out of the hearse that one time on the highway in Poland. Do you remember that story?
Wasn't
we
that
talked about that
Yeah,
here.
was that last year?
Yeah, nothing bigger has happened in Poland since that, but until the listening people just informed us of quite a disturbing incident in Poland. I can't believe that would take place.
I'm going to think about that the whole episode, but I'm not going to make direct references to it so that they can fill in what the story was themselves.
Yeah. This will age well. People will all remember on this day of the recording, which we won't say, that thing happened in Poland that one time.
Yeah, true.
But
and one day we'll be dead and they're like, oh, they're not actually talking to each other.
Yeah, they were actually ghosts the whole time. This was a real ghost in the shell type situation. But, which was, guys, fun fact, that movie's not literally about a ghost.
Yeah.
I know. Shock, terror.
And they don't even collect seashells.
They don't even All right, so we're doing Pictures Powwow, in which we powwow about a picture that has been recommended from someone. It goes in a cycle of recommendation. The first recommendation is from Bartek, then the second, it is from me, and then the third, it is from you, the listening people. And please, give us your suggestions. You can check out the description, and there's all of these options there for how you can contact us or follow us, and give us your suggestions. But Bartek, this was you. You were the one that recommended the film this week. So what was the film you pitched to us?
Yes, so the film that I have picked is the 2006 anime film, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, which is a sort of adaptation of a book that was written by a guy named Grabs His Phone.
Grabs His Phone? Is that Polish?
Yasutaka Tsutsui, who also wrote the original book that Paprika was adapted from.
Very different feeling movies. I wonder if those books are very different feeling books from one another.
Yeah, it's a semi-adaptation in the sense that it's also like a pseudo-sequel. Don't know how much you read about this film.
No, I did not do much reading. I just remembered that this was from the same team or same director that did Wolf Children, which came later. This was first.
Yeah, this was like one or two films before that.
And I was expecting certain things because we have watched Wolf Children. But, listening people, if you have not seen this film, I would highly recommend that you give it a watch for yourself. The plot is somewhat simple, but it becomes a little bit more nuanced and complicated in some really light touch ways as it goes along. If I had to sum it up for you as just a pitch, a high school girl figures out methods of being able to leap back in time within her own, timeline of things. Just little jumps back, and how she decides what to do with this ability is a little bit self-indulgent, and then a little bit of this, and what is the true meaning of life, and what is our connections to one another, and how much of this is a metaphor and how much of this is real, we can get into.
To be more clear about the time travel, this is one where, like, there are only really like two dates in the film. It's not like she goes so far back in time or
Mhm.
anything like that. It's like very short term time travel to change minor things. Like on Wikipedia, one of the like see also articles is like films about time loops.
Yes. They call it time leaping. They
Hmm.
could have called it a quantum leap, but they were not brave enough to do that. So, everyone, please give this a watch for yourself. We are now going to get into the movie and we're going to discuss it and all of the minutiae or the things that we found really relevant and want to sink our teeth into. As said, I was aware of who the filmmaker was because you brought it up last episode, but I had not seen this before, not heard of this before. Maybe you had mentioned it on the podcast in the past, but it did not stick with me. The title kind of indicates that there's going to be a time travel affair, so I was
Hmm.
expecting a sci fi or fantasy twist to things. I was also expecting it to be a bit of a sweet, perhaps bitter-sweet affair, just going off of what Wolf Children was like.
Hmm.
And I got some of those things. I got some of those things. But tell us a bit about your history with this and why you recommended it.
Sure. So this film's from 2006, and I saw it a couple of years after that. I remember I was heading to Poland on a flight. The first flight that I took was Melbourne to Singapore, and this was one of the films that they had on their like in-flight, selection of things that you could watch. And I was like, oh, I've heard of this. I remember around that time, it was roughly, I don't know, 2009-ish time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2010. In terms of like talking about anime films that exist, this was one name that I kept hearing every now and then. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard of this title on the internet. People talking about good anime films to watch, but I didn't know much about it other than the name. So the fact that it was it's there for me to watch. I'm on an 8-hour flight. Why not check it out? And I did, and I remember really enjoying it, but it had been, such a long time since then that I didn't remember too many of the details, just remembered little big things here and there. And it was one that I've always been meaning to just check out again. I remember it being a good time, so I thought it'd be good to do on the podcast. And then, later down the line, I saw Wolf Children, and I learned a little bit about the director Mamoru Hosoda, who's like, oh, he directed that Girl Who Leapt Through Time film. There's a bit of a connection there with Wolf Children, so I thought, oh, we could do that on the podcast at some point, and have that sort of
Mm.
uh, extra little strand to our big web of references.
And you enjoyed the film when you saw it all the way back,
Hmm.
traveling to Poland. It's been a fondness for you. I like this. It took me a while
Mm.
to warm up to it. I must admit. I think why, even with the time travel premise, is I found a lot of this very familiar.
Hmm.
Just a lot of the character types, the plot beats of this, the romance elements of this were not particularly impactful to me, and I will wholeheartedly admit it was hard not to bring in the baggage of the film he would do after this, or a couple after this, as you said, Wolf
Yeah,
Children,
it
in
was
which
two after.
that was so grabs you by the heartstrings early on, and that's the movie, and it rides it out to some interesting places without getting into what that movie is about. But it was hard not to compare in that way because this film, it didn't immediately grab me emotionally or intellectually
Hmm.
like how that one did. So it took me a while to warm up to it. I think I started when it really turned for me is when there's a big reveal of someone else's identity and like their abilities within the framework of the narrative, and it kind of makes you sit back and recontextualize how you weren't paying attention to this person until this point. And so I rode out the second half really enjoying it, being drawn in, liking the character work. But overall, I would say like this is one where it's like, yeah, I liked it. It was sweet, but it didn't bowl me over as much as I maybe was hoping for going in. But I can definitely see if this is one that I revisit in like several years' time. I would probably like it more, but for the time being, it was more of a case of like, oh, that was cute.
Yeah. Even myself watching this one, it did take me a while also to like start to see like really great things about it. It was one where it's like, oh yeah, it's going. There's like some really fun stuff here, but like yeah, in that second half when they start introducing a lot of elements that makes you, question or sort of recontextualize, everything that was happening, make the main character see, the sort of consequences to her actions. Like there was some really interesting stuff there. And even, we're both fans of like time travel stories, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, yes, I would
Yeah.
say so. Like, I've never, like, I watch a lot of science fiction. I watch Doctor Who. Time travel is an essential part of it. It's not my love in science fiction. It's more like you kind of have to abide by it for me. Like, I've seen so many that there are a lot that I do love. But
Mm.
yeah, I would say time travel is definitely something that I gravitate
Yeah,
towards.
and for this one, in a lot of time travel stories, and we've done a couple on this podcast, some
Mm-hmm.
of them check. Um, it typically there's like a device that you have to get into to do it, whereas this one has a sort of like inherent ability kind of thing, and they played around with that in an interesting way near the end, and it sort of gave it a sort of different rule set than the typical time travel story. And a lot of those things like weren't super fleshed out, but they were done to an interesting enough degree to where like I can forgive that they didn't play around with it a bit more.
Yes, I think the vagueness of it works because this has a magical side to it more than a scientific side. Although you do get little things like countdowns, and there's a recurring image of a timer, and there's little breadcrumb pieces of like, is any of this real, or is this character like imagining this, or are they concussed, or this or that? But I think the fact that it has such a not whimsical tone so much, but more of a, again, featherlight touch approach to so much of its material adds to the conceit of the movie being a time traveling one. This is not one where I'm going to be like, well, actually, this would cause a bootstrap paradox and blah, 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 blah. This isn't Primer. When we say time loop and time travel stuff, this is very much metaphorical. At the start of it, or at least in a good percentage of it, they make it feel like only young girls can travel back in time. And I know that's
Yeah.
maybe a flippant statement made by the aunt, but it does keep ringing out as the movie goes along. Like, this just feels like a story that's telling the experiences of what it's like for young women, young girls in life, and like this desire of like being able to change things about
Yeah,
themselves.
this isn't a film about changing the future. It's about changing like literally the present. Like,
Hmm.
oh, that was a bad day. I want to change this one thing so that that thing goes better.
I was perceived this way when I really wanted to be perceived that way. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's this brilliant way of, and you can map this out onto so many conditions of adolescence, whether it is that idea of one's self image or peer pressure or the feeling of like, oh, I let this person down, or responsibility. It is, or even academic achievement. Like, this has a lot of fun with those while not feeling like a cheeky caper affair. Like, there's a version of this story where it is basically anime time travel version of the film Bad Genius, where it has like
Hmm.
that little, oh, I've got an ability and I've got a cunning intellect and I could do this and that, but it doesn't do that. This is, to me, all about the exploration of these many little intricacies and neuroses and things in the head of an adolescent.
Yeah, there's even a line later on where someone who is wouldn't say mastermind, but is the person that kind of has a stake in this time travel existing, expresses relief that the person who found this ability was someone who was just doing like minor things that were a little bit selfish. It's like they weren't trying to destroy the future or anything like that. She just wanted to do karaoke like 3 times in a row or whatever.
I love the designs of the characters. There's this certain uh blankness, I would say, to the designs. I remember bringing this up in Wolf Children a bit too, where there's a certain type of lack of definition on the characters' faces that works really well for when they do emote in
Hmm.
big ways. there's just a certain flavor to it, and it does also give some brilliant little shorthands to characters that maybe aren't having a plot or character themselves or lines of dialogue, but you see them in a scene and you see how they're drawn, and just the shape of them gives you a certain something. Like her aunt, for instance, the ones that she's mainly talking to about the time travel stuff, she has some great lines of dialogue, but you could mute the scenes and you could really read what her character is just by the silhouette of the
Mm,
aunt. She had a lot of she kind of reminded me almost like of a swan or even a geisha girl,
mm.
like that type of that beautiful porcelain, approachable but
Yeah, sort of like
wise.
idealish kind of
Yeah.
lady. She reminded me a little bit of Big Sister from Penguin Highway in terms of like,
Mm.
oh, that older person that I admire kind of
I
thing.
was thinking of Penguin Highway a lot during this, and one of the other anime recommendations that actually goes off of what our last anime recommendation was, which Dr. Asesh, who recommended Pat Labor, also suggested way back, or not way back, but a while back now, Josie and
Josie the Tiger and the
the
Fish
fish,
from last
which
year.
this made me think of a lot. I was thinking of that a lot. Just a lot of that film has characters running around in these tight little streets and these steep hills and crashing into each
Yeah,
other, and
you get the
there's
Japanese neighborhood kind of setting.
Japanese neighborhood and romance and
Yeah.
all of that's
And
there.
film we haven't done yet, but is on our listening people's list. I was thinking of Suzume a fair bit
Mm-hmm.
too. You
Oh
know, female
yes.
protagonists kind of running around doing things.
Yes, and there's his famous one, Your Name, Your Name, yes, which is a big one as well when it comes to this stuff, which it's hard not to compare, even though, again, this came out earlier, but that's what I meant, where it didn't draw me in at first because a lot of this felt familiar, and although it has this time travel thing, it wasn't so unique to me of a hook that it pushed me over the line like say Suzume does, where like one of her main characters turns into a chair. Like
Hmm.
that's such a fucking weird thing that it does draw you in. But it did take a little bit of a slow burn. So how was your overall experiences coming back and rewatching this? Was there elements of the rewatch where you were just like, oh, this really works, have that recontextualization that comes from coming back?
I did like the whole aspect of, you know, the motivation of our main character just going for the minor things, like you said before, like capturing that spirit of adolescence. Like that's this movie's bread and butter. And seeing the joy that she has in that early part of the film where, you know, at the end of that whole sequence she's standing at that riverbank and doing that whole, you know, hot-blooded ha 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 kind of laugh, and just her little quirks when she does it. Like, you never get a sequence in this film, and this is another thing where it's like, oh, you could criticize this, but I kind of like that they didn't do it. You don't get this one scene where, you know, she decides she wants to leap, you see her leap, she goes through some sort of mysterious sequence, then she lands. It's like always
Mm-hmm.
a cut between them. And so, you know, you cut from her leaping to her always doing her iconic little roll and crashing into something, and seeing the different ways they play around with that, where sometimes, you know, she lands on her bed, she crashes into cleaning equipment,
Sometimes things are just falling on her head.
sometimes things are falling on her head, and then there's sometimes where she leaps right into like catching a baseball, like roll, stand, catch, and yeah, playing around with that a lot was a lot of fun.
I like the discovery phase where she's trying to practice it and she doesn't know if it's happening, and then like there's the little children watching and one of them said like, "Did you see that jump?" And she disappeared for a second, and then she starts questioning if that's actually true or not.
Mm.
I love that. I think that was cool. I also found it very funny, genuinely funny, how they took me for a ride when she talks to that aunt about this, and the aunt's like, "Oh, so you're time leaping," and then just goes to the whole like, "Yeah, I know I did this," and I genuinely was like, "Oh wow, okay, I guess this is just one of those like worlds where this is a thing," and then the aunt is like winding her up, being like, you know, and then she tells her little jab story about like, yeah, you know, oh
Yeah.
wow, I wish I could, blah blah blah, and you're
Yes.
like, oh, I see.
The trivia about this being a pseudo sequel is that the book and the, you know, original 80s film that directly adapted like was about the aunt, I
Mm.
guess. And you get a shot later on where
There's a
she
photo
yeah,
on
she
her.
ruminates on like, oh, events of my past, like indicating that she's still kind of waiting or something. And I looked up like a still from the 80s movie, and I think the uniform's similar to what she was wearing in the
Mm.
photo, so it's like, okay, it's the direction there
Is
that they're
that well
going with.
regarded, that film, or no?
Maybe it is, I'm not too sure.
could be interesting to check out in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, that's one thing for this episode. We got to put in the title 2006. I remember at
Mm.
the end of the last episode, I'm like, oh, did I say 2006? Because that's important. We're not watching the 80s live action film. We're watching the 2006
Oh, it's a
anime
live
film.
action film too.
Yes, yes,
Oh, and it's the same name. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I'm putting it all together. Yeah. Okay. That'll be interesting.
Apparently, the author really likes this movie. He's like, oh, this is a fantastic sequel, and it's got like a next generational vibe to it because it's
Mm.
about different characters, younger, a bit more modern.
The animation is gorgeous. I think it all comes to like a crescendo in terms of like the construction of it, the shot compositions, the colors when the characters hit, get hit by the train. That whole the way that's all done, like the shoe
The
flies off
slow
the bike,
motion,
all
yeah.
of it is just so it enraptures you. You feel it. You go, oh, and I liked her monologue of like, oh, so this is how I die, huh? Like the classic, like, ah, it was gonna be a nice day and everything. Oh well, like, oh, I'm dead. By the way, I'm dead, and I just had a like, it was macabre, but also there was something upsetting about it too. So yeah, so what do you want to discuss? What do you want to get into with the movie? What are some things that you're keen on talking about with it?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. The film does go into, well, actually, no, kind of. There's the implied whole thing that you see in time travel stories about, destiny or things having to work out a certain way. It was playing around.
Predestination,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
playing around with that a little bit. Like that's not a concept that I was really too familiar with growing up. It took quite a while for that kind of to be introduced. So I was seeing that in this viewing a little bit, like, oh, someone has to get hit by those two dumbasses who are like swinging around the guy. Someone has to fuck up during the home ec class. And then, the whole climax of the film, like, oh, well, it seems like someone has to crash that bike into the crossing and, get hit by the train. So it was leading that into the drama. And to an extent that, like, oh, it's kind of questionable, like, the question of what agency do characters have if the destiny is a thing, because a lot of the whole selfish aspects of her time traveling, uh the consequences seem to be things like, oh well, how could I have predicted that?
The aunt even says like when our main character is like, I'm enjoying myself, and she's like, I'm laughing. She's like, yes, but it's at the expense of other people.
Hmm.
And she's like, is it really though? And then you see her for a couple of scenes just blow that off. No, no, I'm having a good time. Like, how's this hurting anyone? How's this blah blah blah? And we do see as the narrative unfolds, it has these repercussions. And again, people, if you have not seen this movie, please, I'm gonna spoil some big things here, but you know, in a again bittersweet way, it gives repercussions to the other time traveler in the movie
Yeah.
who has to sacrifice his last thing to save her time situation. And then she has to repay him. And, these are the things that come to pass. Or the whole bike situation, where in all of these timelines of things, the bike has that fucked up brake system, and it could lead to the death of some other characters, not just herself. And she knows this, but she's being selfish during this movie. She doesn't care about that. It only affects me, and I can just rewind time on
Yeah,
myself.
and there's the ironic element too of, like, the bike was the thing that killed her initially, so the brakes failing. So in the first like big leap that she makes, where like the day goes perfectly for her, like the bike's not even a factor. So there's that ironic element where, like, in the final sequence of events, she still woke up late and had to use the bike anyway. So like that whole initial problem suddenly came back, and someone had to face the consequences of it.
Yeah, and this keeps the tone of the movie is so just specific, where it has those elements, and if you explain them, they could sound a bit more like a horror movie or like a monkey paw moral dilemma stuff, but
Yeah,
it's still played in such a light, again, I keep coming back to light fashion, where it doesn't feel as dread filled as that, and yet it still has these heavy moments. It still has these confronting sequences of events in which her not thinking about the bike, because she had a good timeline play out, then is a domino piece that gets hit and it will lead to all of these other ones. It actually, weirdly enough, because I said monkey paw situation, it also made me think of like, there's the film we did that's infamously a mess, but we love
Mm.
it, called Wish Upon.
Yeah, it's fun.
And like that's a movie where a character will say stupid things and then get stupid things happen to them. Like I wish he was madly in love with me, and it has this over the top
I wish she would just
payoff.
rot.
But this is a case where it's like this is the real. This is a realistic version of a selfish teenage character doing things that make them happy, and then it bites them in the ass because it hurts other people.
Hmm.
Because you don't see it coming straight off. When it does start to come into play, you're like, oh, of course. But you've been so wrapped up in her joy and her running around and her figuring out the rules of the time
Yeah,
travel stuff
you're
that you're not
sympathetic.
think. Yeah,
She had a bad day.
she had a bad day.
She died.
Yeah, and she seemed annoyed about it.
Hmm.
I liked her sister
Yeah.
trying to constantly stop her from killing herself, but she's like, "It's fine. I'm just gonna time travel."
That was one of the things I remembered from it. Very cutely, like, don't kill yourself. It's because I ate your pudding. Just like very caring for her while she's leaving the house. They wave at
Mm-hmm.
each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was like a recurring thing. Like whenever she wanted to like change the topic, she's like, let's talk about my sister. She's annoying.
She was the scapegoat.
Yeah.
What do you think about the characters themselves, especially as we go into this, and certain ones are perceived as more important than they actually are in the narrative, and then other ones that maybe didn't look as important were revealed to actually be very important?
Yeah, that was interesting. That's some I forgot about the whole ending twist with the guy, but then once it happened, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember like the tone around this character shifting very wildly.
Yeah, there's a red herring love interest, and then there's an actual love interest.
Yeah, so the whole thing is she's got these two guy friends that she is always hanging out with. They're always playing like baseball catch, throwing the ball to each other. And they're all animated really well. Their characterization really shows. One of them is like the smart guy who's also the tallest one. He's always standing up straight, getting good grades. His father's a doctor. But he's also very cheeky, like, oh, you're late, or you're jerking off kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one's is kind of like semi-delinquenty kind of character where, he's got his hands in his pockets, he mucks around a little bit. Says things that winds other people up. Is
The comedic relief.
the comedic one, the one who like laugh really loudly at things. They're animated really well, and their personality shows through that. And then it turns out in the end that there's a bunch of foreshadowing about like, oh man, he's been moving schools all the time. Like, what?
And again, I didn't even realize that was foreshadowing. I didn't think about it. I just thought, he's a delinquent character.
I say foreshadowing, but only in retrospect. That
Yeah.
seemed to just be like backstory stuff of like, oh yeah, the implication that maybe he got expelled or something, or maybe his family keeps moving. But then it turns out that that backstory was made up because he's from the future.
Yeah.
And that's why he came out of nowhere. And he has a goal, and a lot of his deal with the future is vaguely told. It's like implied to be a dystopian future because he says that he's, he hasn't seen the sky until he's come back to this time.
And so he is different to her because she does little jumps in like these 1 or 2 day periods, while he does, I guess, huge jumps.
Yeah, that's a good question. What jump did he have to do to get
And
back
is
here?
he jumping back within his own lifetime, or is he? We don't know. It's vague. It's not. That's not important. As you said, it's more about the simplicity of seeing something that everyone else doesn't even realize they are taking for granted.
Yes, he even has a line: "The future doesn't even have baseball."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, so the circumstances of the future are vague, but his motivation is something personal. There's this painting that the aunt is like restoring that like its past is completely, unknown. We don't know where it came from, why it was made. And shortly after the present time of this future, it goes off the grid as well.
It's lost.
So the time that where this film is set is like the only time in his recorded history where it's accounted for. And for whatever reason that we don't quite get, he needs to see this painting. And that's why he's in the present. And he has such a good time, hanging out with his friends that he stays for, much longer than intended. And that brings in some, attachment baggage.
It was a brilliant twist. It was awesome. So before we get into him, there's the other boy that we said, and he's presented as the love interest. somewhat.
Somewhat.
Well, he asks her out, doesn't he? Is he the one that asks her out on the bike? Which one's the one that
No,
asks
that's
her?
the time traveler
That's
friend.
the time traveler one, right? Because he's the red-headed one. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one that asks her. Oh no, the other guy is the one where he's getting like other girlfriends, and
There's a shy girl who's really into him, and she's got like two
she plays
pushy
and she
friends.
kind of plays matchmaker in between all of
Yeah,
this, and yeah.
there's a line that she has with the aunt where it's indicated back and forth that they've had conversations about like, oh, what if you go out with one of them? So
Mm-hmm.
like the thoughts crossed her mind, but it's not anything that's played seriously in the present time of this film.
Yeah, and that other guy, he's the more jock of the group, I guess, but
Hmm.
he's, and he has this interesting dynamic where, yeah, he how do I describe it? So he comes in as like as one of the two friends that are guys,
Yeah.
and they equally take up time as a viewer in my mind because they're just the goofy guy friends, and then one of them's more of a romantic interest, but she's not so much interested in that. She's more interested in like fixing her life.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where like the whole romance stuff kind of disappears because she's so focused on just liking her life. Even the time travel stuff takes a pause because she's actually enjoying the moments in her life until something happens that makes her have to go back to it.
We should point out, like, from the beginning, she's not really romantically inclined.
No, she's not interested. She's offended at the idea of it. But she's kind of not interested in most things. Like that's the stuff. Like with her time travel, she's like trying out different interests. Like, oh, what happens if I was really academic, and what happens if I'm really sporty? And she doesn't have
just in
anything she's truly drawn to.
Yeah.
She's just living vicariously.
Avoid bad things and do things that I want to do in the moment. Like I mentioned before, they go to karaoke. They're, you got 5 minutes left. It's like, I still want to keep doing it. So she just time travels back and keeps going.
Yes. And then, that guy, he's kind of like the big buff one, and he gets like this girl date thing, and he has like his whole little subplot in the background, and you're just like, oh, this is sweet. And then he takes her bike.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, they're going to die.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was indicating earlier, like, oh, the character agency thing. Like, oh, well, we weren't expecting the bike to be taken. But the consequences of, like, finding out that the bike has been taken is, like, immediate. Like, oh shit, I need to stop them.
And the kind of delinquent behavior of the three of them bites her in the ass when he, like, picks the lock, like when he like figures out the combination to her bike to go get it. And
and it's because
no.
it's some very basic password that's like indicating her name, Makoto.
Yep. And then like the girl that he has is very sweet, and you're like, no. I actually had this comment where it's like, oh, when he gets hit by the train, are we going to have the? And I didn't. I kind of predicted a thing, but it didn't go the way I expected. I said, oh, is it going to leap back in time because there's another time traveler? The girl that guy's dating, because I was at that point like only girls time travel.
That's a good point, yeah.
And then it did time travel back, and I was like, oh, okay, so what's the deal? And then they reveal that it's the other boy who has kind of been sidelined through the movie.
Yeah, she's been ghosting him through time travel.
He himself is a time traveler, and then we reveal, like we've said, his reasons. I like that there's a vagary, and like it's as simple as he just wants to see a painting, and then he stays there because he's enjoying the moment so much, which is the opposite of her stuff in some moments of the film as well. Like, she's not there to enjoy something as simple as a painting. She wants to, do this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing, and then she gets bored of that, and then she gets bored of that, and she like burns through all of her time traveling stuff because there's also like a limitation on it.
She eventually discovers that she has like a mark on her arm somewhere that indicates how many more times she can time travel.
What was the first? It was like 90 was the first time?
She thought it was 90, but it was upside down, so it was actually 9.
Yes, that's correct. And I like that. That was a cool visual detail.
And you get an explanation for where she got those charges from too.
But that twist is really great. It's nice, and it shifts the movie entirely as well. Where before it was kind of like slice of life, maybe a little bit comedic. It wasn't heavy. I was expecting the movie to be heavy. Because I watched Wolf Children, which is fucking heavy.
Yeah, I've only seen these 2 films from Mamoru Hosoda, but apparently a lot of them are very light-hearted.
Yeah. But then it does become heavy and not maybe as devastating as Wolf Children, but it does take a left turn once
Yeah,
we get the reveal, and even the color palette of the movie shifts. It becomes a little bit more washed out, and it became more of what I was wanting. It became very mature, is what I'm saying.
yeah. It is a coming of age story in a way.
Hmm. So, what do you feel about all of that stuff? And like you said, you kind of forgot about this element of the movie until you had to see it again.
Yeah, and like I said, there was an element. I was enjoying the film all the way through. I was enjoying, the selfishness and how much she was enjoying and like her reactions. Like I remember there was one point where there was multiple points actually, but I think it was a lot during like the karaoke stuff. Like she would roll into the room, crash. They'd be
Hmm.
like, "What the hell are you doing?" And then she'd stand up with a really happy face. And it's like, very funny. I was enjoying a lot of those moments, but then when it did take the turn and like, oh yeah, there's actually a lot of well thought out things going on here. Like, you know, she runs out of charges trying to save her friend who's on the bike with the girl, and then she finds out that the other guy also just ran out of his charges to also save him,
Hmm.
and then later on. She finds out, oh, because he did that, I got my charge back. And, that was a clever play on the whole time travel mechanics where they could kind of hypothetically work together to keep a charge in a way. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, good. That's something you don't get if this was a film that had like, the time travel device.
And then she uses her charge to help him
Hmm.
to keep his charge. And she reveals to him in the past when things were a little bit simpler that she knows everything. And I liked his reaction of like, stupid, why would I talk? Like, he's just, and again, she traveled back enough where he's a lot more, as we said, a lot more brash of a character. He doesn't have that wisdom that we saw when he was talking to her, and that
Yeah,
stoicism.
she's
And
got like these two modes.
when they talk to each other, when they reveal the truth, they were like in between time, like everything was frozen, and then he disappears into the crowd, and it just feels very ethereal,
Yeah.
very
I
magical.
like that he did have that one moment though where she mentioned like, "Oh, we go to the festival and I could wear my yukata." He does admit like, I would like to see that,
Yeah,
but yeah, I
there's a
can't."
lot of like, oh, you said we're going to do this. Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. I also did get a giggle out of just the voice acting of every time she had to say a yeah or a huh. She was just very. It just made me laugh. No other
Mm.
actor did that. It was just her in particular, and it made me giggle each time it happened. I don't know why.
It's got that little tomboy energy.
It's just very amusing to me. But
There was this is a little more meta, but so I had to look for this film to watch it, obviously,
mm,
and the first place I looked was Daily Motion, and there is
oh,
an upload of the film on there, but there was no indication about whether it was Japanese or English dub. So I had to skip around the timeline a little bit, and like the first three places I went, there was no dialogue. And then like the fourth place I went, there was dialogue. And the shy girl has these two friends who are like, very pushy, and they're the ones who are like really trying to push for her to confess to the smart friend and, get the relationship going. And they confront Makoto a couple of times. And there is one moment where they talk about how, in the timeline where she did really well on the test, uh, they pushed her to do a confession, and the guy rejected her because there's a goal that he had to focus on instead.
mm,
And the way that they revealed that was they did this very overacting theater thing of like being like, "Oh, I cannot go with you," kind of thing, and it really threw me for a loop because I was expecting Japanese dialogue, and instead it was like bad acting theater English happening at me.
mm.
So I had a real laugh at that, like, "Oh, what is this film?"
I there was a cool moment too where which girl was it? Like one of her friends or one of those in the lab, where when our main character does travel all the way back
Hmm.
to undo everything, and she bumps into them and they have that conversation and then they leave and then she reads the thing on the chalkboard about how
Time waits for no one.
time waits for no one. And I like that as a recurring little,
It's a
again,
recurring line, and
it's a
it's in
recurring
English too.
line and theme
Yeah.
of the movie.
Yeah, she has a female friend that during school hours, like she's the one that she hangs out with. Her name's Yuri, I
And
think.
takes and neglects as a person. Like she
Mm.
has to apologize to her a couple of times for like leaving her in the lurch with things when it's like, you're actually supposed to be doing this. Oh yeah.
And she likes the smart friend too. No,
Yeah.
sorry, she likes the rough around the edges future
Hmm.
friend.
But yeah, that's this movie. Is there anything else you want to go over? Is there any other behind the scenes stuff that you know about, or any other scenes or character beats, or just points of the movie that you want to hit? Because yeah, I can't think of much else that I really want to sink my teeth into. I did enjoy this. I hope in the future when I come back to it, I'll get more out of it. But
Hmm.
yeah, in this place for me, I was like, yeah, it was good. It was cute.
Yeah, it wasn't one that I thought had too much going for it, but I just do remember it being a good time, and I thought, yeah, it'd be nice to revisit this filmmaker. I think I got all the trivial stuff out there. I guess the only thing that kind of niggled at me in the film was there's a sequence near the end where she's running to meet with the boy like the last time
Mm-hmm.
at the riverbank, and it's a very long shot of her running,
Mm-hmm.
and the panting that the voice actress was doing.
Well, they on purposely do it too because they fade out all the other noise. It starts out with like people being like, "Whoa, watch out!" and beep beeps and
Hmm.
look where you're going. And then it slowly fades out all the audio just to her panting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very intense, and the voice actress did a
Mm.
great job. But I feel like it didn't quite sync up with what we were seeing. Like she seemed
Mm.
the character herself actually looked like she was going pretty steady, but like the voice actress was just like
Oh,
panting. And
really?
I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect there.
Oh, okay. I didn't feel that disconnect, but okay. I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
bring up that could have worked in a great in as a sequence when she's trying to stop her friends from dying on the train. Just
Hmm.
it's very intense. It's an intense sequence, which I understand because she's running back, but there's a level of it's like, oh, you know he'll be there when you run back there. Like I don't know, it needs to be this angrily intense, but in comparison to stopping
Well,
your friends die.
she's desperate for the emotional climax
But
of the film.
Bartek, if you wrong me, I immediately have to tell you that you wronged me, and you have to apologize. Apologize now. You remember that lady in this movie, the one that she keeps like hitting
Oh,
with
the
the
lady with the
child?
sun?
Yeah, and she's like, "Do you have eyes? Are you blind? Now admit what you did is wrong. Now apologize." She was so demanding. I love that woman. She was always like,
I remember the line about "Are you blind?" I don't remember.
"Oh," she was like, "Oh, now apologize." She was like each time she was like, "You've seen what you did is wrong." Yeah, like she makes it so that she has to admit what she's done is wrong, and then she's like, "Now apologize." And he immediately is like on her ass. Even when she was running and didn't acknowledge the mother of the kid, she was like, "Do you see what you did is wrong? Apologize." She's like constantly like, "You apologize right now." And the kid at the second go around, where again she's running after her friends, he's amused by and gives her like a little wave. I thought that was very cute. I like that as
I
a
like that.
recurring
Yeah,
woman who
I like that.
gets fucked over by the
Yeah.
timeline changes.
Well, I like that there was one where she wasn't fucked up. It
Mm-hmm.
was the one where. Oh no, sorry. No, sorry, I was thinking of something else. It was before the train. There was a
Yep.
different mother and child, but then
Yeah, there was a different one.
yeah,
Yep,
but
yep.
then it turned out that a few minutes later the actual event happened. So
Yep.
my mistake.
Exactly. So, good movie. Everyone, check this out if you haven't.
Mhm.
It's available out there. Have you seen any of his other movies, or is it just these two? Just these two?
I think I've only seen these two. There is the one that he did between the two is called like Summer Wars. I've heard nice things about that
Has
one.
he made more since Wolf Children? I can't
Oh
recall.
yeah. So after Wolf Children, he did The Boy and the Beast, which I don't know anything about.
Oh, I know, I've heard of that one.
The one after that was one that was actually nominated for an Academy Award, Mirai. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
and then the one after that, you actually linked me a review of it. Mark Commode talked about it. It's Belle.
Yes, that's one that I'm interested
Yes,
in. That
that's
looks
yeah.
really, really interesting.
I
for sure.
forgot that was Hosoda. So when I saw that in his filmography, I'm like, oh yeah, Ryan linked me that, and it actually looked good, and Ryan was interested in it. So
Maybe in the future
Yeah.
we'll come back.
and maybe check out the '80s film at some point or something. I don't know. It could be interesting.
Now it is my time to recommend a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm moving us to an American film,
Yep.
live action, starring Will Ferrell,
Okay.
and it is called Stranger Than Fiction. And I don't want you to look up anything about it. Just that's all you need to know. I don't know if you know anything about this movie, but it'll
Isn't this
be
a TV
interesting.
show?
No, Stranger Things or Stranger Than Fiction. No, it's not a show. It's a movie. Stranger Than Fiction. You'll have to wait and see. It's a movie with Will Ferrell.
What was that show you were once telling me about with the catatonic dad?
Strangers with Candy.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Very different. Very different. But Will Ferrell. When was the last time we had him? We've had him for sure on the podcast.
Oh.
He has to have been here.
Yeah, what would it have been?
But I don't know if we've done many where he's like the lead man.
Yeah, maybe not. That's a really good question. I'm really curious
Well,
now.
we're going to do one where he's our lead. So everyone make sure to check out Stranger Than Fiction. And as I said, if you haven't seen it before, go in blind. It's an interesting experience blind. But we will be back next time to talk about that. If you've enjoyed the podcast, make sure to share it around and give us a rating and review. If you want to contact us, how can they do that, Bartek?
There are multiple different ways, and we're pretty receptive to all of them. So we have we have a YouTube channel, Spit and Polish Presents. We see the comments, we get notifications for them, so we can read them. You can contact us on Twitter. You can contact us on Facebook. Both of those are called Spit and Polish Presents. You can email us directly at our Gmail, which is spitandpolished@gmail.com. The Polish is like a past tense.
Yep.
Don't forget that ED. And yeah, you can message us about whatever you want. And if you have a film recommendation for us to do, every 3 episodes, which will be the one after the next episode.
Yep.
Let us know in any of those methods, and we add them all to the list. We, if possible, try to pick something that is accessible to us, because sometimes we get recommended films that are not in English language, and we need subtitles, and
they're older films, so they're harder to
yeah.
find. Although I do want films that are older as recommendations too, since this is a year of older cinema on the pod. So if you have those as well, feel free.
Everything goes on the list, but if we can't find subtitles for it, it'll stay on for a while.
We try. Some of them we do find a while later, but we do.
When we did that Polish film last
on
year,
the Silver Globe,
that one we were waiting, I think, 3 years before we could actually do it because subtitles.
We found it.
Yeah, it's a film that suddenly became super accessible in a lot of different ways.
Weird how that works. But everyone, thank you so much. We shall be back next time. Anything else you want to say to the listening people before we leave? Before we run out of here?
We're not going to leave, Ryan. We're going to leap. We'll do the episode again.